2 cup games in the space of 4 days has got us all dreaming of a possible Wembley appearance again. We all know that Reading do not do very well at Wembley, and we've got a long way to go to get there. However, we are still technically in the hat for all of the rounds that we've got to play in these cup competitions. A win over Fleetwood means that we're through to the second round of the FA Cup proper. And, of course, a loss to Cheltenham last night, which we'll talk about in due course, means that we are still technically in with a chance of getting through to the next round of the Garrett Cup. Here to talk about those games and a little bit extra is Ross. Ross, we're back in our usual habitats, if you like, in terms of where we are. We're not in Junior Hoylett's box. We're not the Dreamers Club anymore.
Wow, you don't know what Junior Hoylett's got planned for my house, but I digress. Carry on.
Wow, this is it. And I learned some interesting things about Junior Hoylett, which I was really pleased about. I might divulge those later on in the pod. But, kind of the key question really I want to ask you to start off this pod, because it's all the news at the moment. Which current Reading FC player would make the best president?
Okay, it's a good question.
That's right.
I realized that it's a strong start. I realized that I can answer this question just with the center back partnership, and with both of them, because I feel like if you want me to tell you, like who would make the best American president right now, I would say actual part American.
I didn't say American. I just said president.
Well, that's true. But I'm just thinking, he's a young man. He's been in America in a period of upheaval, and he's a confident young fresh face to move the country forward. But if you wanted to ask me who I think Americans would vote in, his crazier, more unpredictable Mbenge next to him, I think would probably be that seems to be the way the wind's blowing these days, isn't it? So yeah, one of those two.
I think Joel Pereira would be quite cool as a president. He's got stature, do you know what I mean? Not just talk, but to be honest with you, the man that really I'd get behind would be Harvey Nibbs.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that is
100%. But 100% would be Harvey Nibbs for me.
It has to be a member of the back four because there's a Ministry of Defence, but not any of the other positions. So it's got to be the back four.
Well, listen, we've always tried to not talk about politics on the podcast, and we're going to carry on that tradition today. We're going to block all that noise out. We're going to talk about our mighty football club, the respective games that we've had over the last few days. Before we do that, massive thanks as always to ZCZ Films, who continue to sponsor us. I know Ross plugged it last week because we didn't forget at all. But Valdemar's got a new show out. Yeah, there was a lot going on. They were a bit sidetracked by hot dogs and chips and all that kind of stuff.
You were literally parenting and podcasting at the same time, so I'll let you off for not remembering.
Mate, listen, I do it all. It's all in the locker. Don't worry about that. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, Valdemar's got a new show out. It's on Sky Arts. I think it's on Mondays. Is it on Mondays? You can probably download it, can't you? But it's out there.
We've forgotten to do it entirely. Now we've forgotten the day that is.
Yeah.
It's called Arts Great Mysteries. I know that
There
much.
You go. There you go.
There are reruns of Mannerism running before it. Now, what day it is, go back to the previous episode.
Yeah.
we'll let you know.
There'll always be an episode that you can watch about it, which is the main thing. But listen, we don't get any old, random to sponsor us. We have the creme de la creme of the art world, art critic. He definitely is. If you like your art, if you want to see our sponsor live, not live, but recorded. You know what I mean? On the telly box, then have a look at Sky Arts because he's on there. So I'm gonna stop talking and absolutely destroying the plug that I was trying to set us all up for. And we're gonna get into the recap. We're gonna do Fleetwood first, so we'll get into that after this short break. Right, despite the fact that we might have just lost our main sponsor because we messed up what we were trying to say about it, we're back with. We're back with the recap. What a mess. What an absolute joke of a podcast this really is. Episode 394, by the way. 394 of this podcast.
Okay.
So, we're rapidly approaching 400.
It's 395.
Right. Again, what is going on here? Is it 395? Are you sure?
I'm the one who's been up all night. Although you've got kids, maybe you've been up all night as well. I don't know, but my word. Anyway, it's episode 395.
Is it 395?
It is. Yeah, we're fast approaching that 400th.
Well, even faster, even faster.
We're
I feel like I need
Fleetwood.
to check that now.
Yeah.
It is it is 395. Shut up, Ben. Just get on with the podcast. No one cares about what
Get
number
on
it
the
is. We just
podcast
want,
395.
yeah, we want to hear about Fleetwood Mac Town. See what's going on? Shambles, absolute shambles. Right,
Cods.
COD Army, Charlie Adams, Fleetwood Town came to town quite literally, and they put up a good fight. To be fair, like it was a weird atmosphere in the ground. I won't beat around the bush, and I think I said this in the column. And I had the displeasure of sitting next to our editor Sim, who kind of made the very valid point that it was almost similar to kind of the COVID era games when we were allowed back in. I think it was the
Oh,
start of
yeah.
December, and obviously we had about 3,000 in the Sir John stand, and it was all a bit odd, really. There was huge problems, and I don't say that lightly. Getting into the stadium, there was only one gate open, which seemed a little bit ridiculous, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
I
the
think
club,
having
there was a star statement kind of around a little bit of that today, right? So I just,
yeah, well, I think we'll touch upon that because I think it's valid, really.
yeah,
I don't think the ticket prices were particularly useful either. I think £15 for that was probably a little bit over the top, if I'm honest. And that showed in the amount of people that kind of weren't there. Really, it's not good to see the stadium like that at all. And I kind of saw recently that if you average out our attendances over the course of this season in the league, compared to what we can operate at in terms of capacity, we're running at about 50%, which is not good, and it's a damning indictment of where the club is. However, those what I like to call hardy souls in inverted commas were treated to an all right showing. To be honest with you, they were not too bad as a team. There was kind of some interesting selections in terms of Tyler Bindon playing. I was a little bit surprised by that. I don't think it helped that obviously the under 21s were on the night before, which kind of pretty much told us a lot about the team selection that would take place on the Saturday against Fleetwood. So yeah, it was a good day's work. I think second half certainly we were much better. I I think when you're looking at the balance of play, Fleetwood didn't really deserve a lot out of it. I know Button made some good saves, and we'll kind of talk about him later on as well. But we weren't really tested particularly, and it was a pretty straightforward game for people like Rashisha, who I thought did very well at right back. Holzman, who we'd kind of mentioned previously, he's been around the club for a long time, and this is a big season for him in terms of trying to negate a way into the team, and
yeah,
into the
yeah,
squad. And I think you watched the Cheltenham game, which we'll talk about in due course, but there were some green shoots there. There really were, and that team probably hadn't had a lot of time together to be able to formulate a plan for the game. But they did. They were really professional. I thought Charlie Savage was very good. Kind of at the core of both the goals that we scored. I thought Ben Elliott was very good as well. I thought
yeah.
Shea
Interesting to
Spencer
see
is,
them
is
together.
yeah, and it was nice. There was a nice rotation pattern in terms of their defence and attack on both sides of the ball. They were kind of dropping back. One of them was dropping back. One of them was moving forward. And certainly when it worked the best was when Savage was able to move up a little bit more, get a few shots
Yeah,
off, and try and make things tick with Wareham. And he had a good game. It was
one.
unfortunate that the goal went down as an own goal, but he was okay in the game.
Yeah, no, so yeah, and I did see that, yeah, which obviously it sucks when that happens. Obviously, you just went, give me the goal, man. Like, don't be an enemy of football. Like, the defender doesn't want the own goal. Just give him the goal. I understand how the rules work around that. I just thought it's interesting what you were saying. Sorry about Elliot and Savage. Playing nicely. It's always interesting to see this Reading midfield without Lewis Wing, just because he's obviously become one of Reading's standout players, if not the standout player, and the guy around a lot of the team works. But I do think he and other Reading players who have been playing now basically endless games for a year. without much rotation at all. Some of them are starting to look a little bit tired for my money. So obviously there's an international break coming up, which will be good. But any time like this, where we can give them some time off, I think that's good. So it's interesting as well to see Elliott and Savage kind of playing in those like 8 positions together. And I'm really, really interested to see Craig at the back of that too, just to see what those 3 together look like. And I do think now we've got some right backs who could challenge. We'll talk about that later. But I did notice when I saw them, playing together, which has admittedly been not in huge swaths so far, there seems to be much more positional flexibility in terms of which part of the pitch they will go to when it's Elliott and Savage together. Whereas when you get maybe Elliott and Nibs together, those 2 players seem much more locked into their sides of the field, their defensive duties, things like that. Nibs really wants to be assisting down that left side and trying to win the ball there, squeeze the opposition into the touchline and things like that. But Savage, will be always start on the left, right? Because that's his better side. But like I've seen him coming very, very deep into the right side as well to help out with like Michael Craig and things like that, while also doing the job of going out all the way to the corner flag, on the left side some points. So I just think it's quite interesting watching those together. And yeah, I would really like to see at some point a Craig, Savage, and Elliott midfield just to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting game in that some of those players were playing slightly different positions to what they probably expect. I mean, you can talk about players that probably didn't have a good game, and that probably would be doing a disservice to the players that did. So we'll kind of focus on that, really. I mean, Ashgar Ahmed I think he was making his first professional start, and he did okay. He looked very, very athletic on that side in terms of the fullback position. And it was a really interesting point that Ruben made last night after the loss to Cheltenham about wanting to grow our own players as an ethos. There's loads of stats floating around last night about the age or the average age of the team or the starting 11. You could tell by the squad numbers that a lot of these players had kind of been drafted in from the youth team and the under-21s as well. And, one of the benefits to me of dropping down the league, if there are any, are the amount of extra games that we get to play as a club and be able to build more of a squad moving forward. I've made no secret I'm a huge FA Cup fan. I really, really like it as a competition, and so having extra games potentially, round 1 and round 2, which we will have this season, is great. Because it allows those other players to come in and play. Same with the Bristol Street Motors. That's again a crop of games that are classed as first team games for us, but allow those players to come in and be competitive,
To his credit, Tim Della was actually making this point when he was interviewing Rashisha, either yesterday or a few days ago, I'm not sure, but he was saying to him directly, it's always nice to progress in the cup. Every player and the way that the club is kind of like set up on the football side right now is that you want to win every game, right? But I think specifically for Rashisha and players like that, they should be extra motivated to win games in this trophy or in any like cup competition like this, because like you say, it's just more opportunities for them to play and more opportunities for them to get reps against, full men's sides rather than, like just playing the under 21 stuff, which is fantastic for development. But obviously a lot of U21 players come to the full men's side and they can't quite hack it physically, or it's just a different game. Doesn't quite work for everyone. So I think that's interesting. Quick question: do you know is Abraham Kanu injured at the moment?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, okay.
And this is what I said, because halfway through the second half I was like, ironically after he scored, I said to Sim, why is Bindon playing? I just don't understand that. And he made the point that who else would play? Harley Dean's injured, which is unfortunate because he would have been drafted into that game 100%. Carney's injured, which meant he couldn't do that. Dorset's out, so there was very little players. And obviously we talked about, drafting in players from the under-21s, but they've still got a season to be able to build momentum in terms of, players like Michael Stickland, John Clark, all these players they need to keep hold of to be able to build their own length of games and understanding in their team for Noel Hunt's side. So it's a difficult balance, and I think on reflection, I think Ruben got it spot on Saturday. I think there was a really nice balance to the team. A lot of those players that have played in the first team were being real leaders. You know, he made some subs. I think Bengay came on later on. I think Michael Craig came on as well, off the top of my head. So you know, there was some good there was some good, you know, positives out of the game, and that teases us up nicely to the second round, which has been quite unreal, really, seeing the social media reaction to this. And you know, obviously, if you don't know, and if you're one of those people that uses this podcast to get your Reading news exclusively, um, we're sorry we're a little bit late. We didn't want to talk about the Fleetwood game and then go, oh, we've got to talk about the Cheltenham game as well. So we wanted to kind of round these two games up and then kind of get back into a normal routine as of next week. We're playing Harbour Town from Leicestershire. They're in the Southern Central Division, which, you know, whichever way you look at it, is quite far down the pyramid, non-league as non-league gets. Had a really good result in the first round. You know, the same day as us, 1-4-1 away from home. You know, Ross, what did you make of that draw? Not just for our visitors from Leicestershire when they come down at the end of the month, but also for us as a football club to be able to hopefully. And we say that based on previous results that we've had, because we've had a shocker in the FA Cup in recent years, particularly against lower league opposition.
Yeah.
What did you make of that draw overall?
I think kind of what you were alluding to at the end there was the first thing that I thought. Once I found out I think they're 7th tier Harbour Town, I was like, well, this one is going to be proper humiliating. Looking forward to this. What was the last time that who we went down to? It was Eastleigh.
Eastleigh last year, we had that horror show against Kidderminster where it all kicked off, and that was the third round. That one, I think. So yeah, we've not done well, you know, and there'd always seemed to have been a flashpoint. I
I think we're in a different place as a club,
yeah,
right? Like, definitely. So this should be, or at least on the field we are. So like this should be kind of like a way, and like we'll talk about it in a minute with Cheltenham, but like everyone at the club, I think right now, every player at the club is playing. Maybe not like their most incredible football ever, but the floor at which people are playing right now is pretty high. Like I'm not even yesterday with the game with like tons of kids and an average age under 20 years old. I didn't see tons and tons of mistakes. I saw sloppy play, slow play, which I expect from younger players who are still kind of learning how to manipulate tempo and how to, you know, like just like they're learning those little things that, you know, like 2 touches is better than 3, 3 touches is better than 4. Like get on with it, play the ball. Like there were a few times last night where they dallied a bit, but at the same time, I do think that everyone is playing at a pretty high level in terms of their floor. So I would hope that we can win this one, you know, comfortably, and that be some sort of thing for us to reflect on. You know, third time lucky, we actually managed to beat a non-league team, but they have just signed Sandro. So, you know, like clearly they're on point for scoring an absolute banger against us.
Just a random signing. Now, whether or not he plays against us or he plays at all, I don't know. I've no idea. But that was, you know, they've had a really, really, you know, busy week in terms of drawing us, and then it's quite weird the reaction. Like I kind of respected it, and it kind of warmed me a little bit. But like it's quite weird because, you know, the absolute basket case that we've been. And yet there are clubs like Harbour Town that are like, wow, this is like a massive day out. And it's like, yeah, we know that because Reading's like the greatest place in the world, right? But actually, when you look at it, it's like, it's just bizarre, isn't it? You know, I saw a tweet they put out calling us a former Premier League team. I was like, I know, but it's just... You know.
That is, I think, still the perception of Reading to a certain degree, and obviously we know better. But like, I think that, like, obviously we are so plugged into like our ownership crisis and all of these kinds of things that like we think it's the biggest thing in the country as it comes to football. But genuinely, like, probably people, you get more clicks on the like 115 charges stuff for Man City or the stupid sponsorship rules stuff that's going on with them right now. Like, unfortunately, like. In terms of like the wider football world, I do think that there is some like recognition of what Reading have gone through in the last few years now, and people generally understand. They hear Reading, they're like, oh, things are on a downward trend there from where they were, but they do still think of like the Premier League players. And like Stephen Sidwell is on one of the biggest football podcasts in the country. Like people remember when they think of Reading, they think of that era of Reading. I think like when I think of Birmingham, I think of Premier League era Birmingham. Blackburn, I think of Premier League era Blackburn. Like all of these things, I think they just go back to that, and also like it's a proper, in inverted commas, stadium that looks like it could, which can scale all the way to Premier League level as well. So I hope that we can put a lot more people in it for this game, and I do think that like games against non-league are fun, like they're novelty. So like I think we'll get much more interest, and it's whether the club can respond to that interest in a positive manner and get a lot of fans in there.
Well, just to wrap up the FA Cup excitement, if you like, and the Fleetwood Town result, there were, as I said at the start of the podcast, there were issues getting into the stadium. The match day experience generally was not. I don't like sitting in the Sir John stand. I like sitting where I sit, and I always find it really bizarre. I mean, I had a good seat, don't get me wrong, but it's not home to me sitting in that stand, and it's all a bit alien. But that's by the by. That's not the club's fault. I think. And it's out there for you to read, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. Star put out a statement. They've obviously been in discussions with, the club themselves around, what happened on Saturday. By and large, it's kind of as you would expect. It comes across a little bit defensive to me, if I'm honest, from the club's point of view. I saw some fairly high up people manning the turnstiles when I went in, and sort of had a little bit of a joke with them about it, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good in terms of the queuing element, and it shouldn't take that long to get into the stadium, specifically when you've got a stand like that and you've got enough turnstiles to be able to operate and get people in. I'm just throwing my pencil down in anger, if you saw that on YouTube. But, the one thing I would completely disagree with was the ticket pricing. I think £15 was a lot of money for that. And I think a lot of other people felt that way as well by kind of staying away. And I get it wasn't a big tie, and I get that Fleetwood weren't a draw or whatever, but I think there's still a willingness from a lot of the fan base that want to go. But I just thought £15 was, when you chuck in everything else, was a lot of money. Even if you said 10 quid, cap it at that, happy days. I think there would have been a lot more people that would have gone for £10. That's just my personal perception. So I hope that, bearing in mind we split the money, and it's ironic because Harbour are like, oh, it'd be great for the money. It'd be great for us. We need the money as well. Like, we're not in that ballpark, and we can't just go, here's 15 grand to get your pitch repaired or whatever Newcastle gave Wimbledon the other day. Like, we need that money as well. Right. So, I would imagine they'll bring a few down. I would imagine that the club will think seriously about how much they're going to charge, given that it's likely to be on television, given the the kind of draw that it is. So fingers crossed they look at that and they drop the prices down a little bit. Let's move on to Cheltenham then. You saw that one for us, Ross. 1-0 loss, pretty good goal by all accounts that Cheltenham scored. Very youthful team, not a first teamer in sight, which is probably not a bad thing given the game that we've got coming up this weekend. What overall did you make of that game?
Again, they kind of touched on it already in terms of just saying like the floor is relatively high, but the ceiling, still has room to grow, as it were. So you're right. Like there weren't really any first teamers there. I mean, I guess Adrian Akonde would be the only one there that you could maybe say, but it's so recent that he's come into the team. I think someone pointed out. I mean, like they have Reading's outfield players. Yes, they had 4 combined league starts between them, and I think all of those belong to Akonde. So it really was a very useful team. So like I was saying already, I think there were some points whereby they showed their talent, and occasionally playing a little bit slow got in their way. It really can be about very small margins. Which foot did you pass the ball to? Did you bobble the ball, or did it go smoothly along the ground? Like, did you take a third touch when you didn't need to, and thus you meant that there was less room for the striker to operate then. I think that Reading were actually pretty. So yesterday I was looking at like crosses versus like possession and stuff like that, and clearances actually. At halftime yesterday, Cheltenham had 2 clearances, and we had 22. And this is while possession actually wasn't that different. So I think the thing that Reading was struggling with yesterday is that they could protect the ball, but they couldn't progress it at all. Like as soon as they tried to go downfield, they were really having trouble like finding a line breaking pass or anything like that. And we had a chance very early on through Osho. But after that, there was a long period in the game where we were really struggling to just progress. It became a very scrappy game. It has to be said. It wasn't a classic against Cheltenham. I do think Ahmed's a good player. I like the look of what I saw there, and again, like kind of opens up another option if you want to try and play Craig in midfield at some point this season. I think Ahmed is ready for the bench, at least. Obviously, he has been on the bench for some games recently, and should really be getting some appearances sometime soon. Ruben loves to change the fullbacks, so I think that Ahmed, especially when we're playing, weaker teams in League One, deserves a go. He was doing some things really nicely in terms of how he was progressing the ball down the field and where he was taking up position. Had some nice dribbles, where one in which he earned a free kick nicely. But what was most important for me is that he kept winning 1v1s down his side of the field over and over again. If he gets into 50-50 challenges and things, he would just find a way to poke the ball away. There was one whereby he had moved into an attacking position in the middle of the field, and then the ball was lost right on the wing and started coming back towards the box very, very quickly. And Ahmed was the one who was able to get back and step in after all of that. So I think it was an imperfect performance, but to me, it kind of said that he is probably ready. Of all of the players there, I think Ahmed was the one who looked the most ready to me.
Mm.
And the last thing I guess I'll say, the structure of our team really doesn't seem to help strikers at all.
Yeah.
Nobody can get it. No striker playing there seems to be able to get much of a touch on the ball or much influence in the game right now. And it just reminds me every time I see another striker struggling in our system how well Sam Smith does and what a good job he does of interpreting that role. And the fact that he still scores pretty consistently in the system, which I just don't think is particularly set up to help the center forward, it is quite impressive to me. So I think a 1-0 loss was just about the right result. David Button had kept them in it a little bit before that, and they probably didn't create enough, really. They can protect that ball, but they just couldn't really create enough to win the game.
I think there's two sides to this coin, really. In some respects, it's a bit of a brave new world because that would pass the team that started last night against Cheltenham, and I'll run through that in a minute. Would pass as an under-21 team in theory.
Yeah.
And like you said, aside from Akande and of course David Button, no one else really has been hugely close to the first team consistently. So Button in goal. Had Ahmed, Stickland, Holzman and Rashisha, who I thought has done really, really well over the last two games across the back. Tyler Saki, Shea Spencer and Joe Barrow. And then, of course, Akande, Tuma kind of in the middle spot, number 9, I guess, really, and Osho on the other side. And when you look at that, there's a healthy competition amongst that group of players. So, that a lot of them would have been disappointed to not be in contention for Saturday, regardless of the fact that they might have been a little bit upset they were picked for the under-21s the night before, but that's by the by. And then, of course, coming into this game, they would have wanted to be around. The problem comes there is that there is still a massive gap between this group of players overall and the first team. And, I guess the fact that we're looking at Ahmed, I think Holzman is worthy of a bench spot as well. I think he's done really well over the course of this season, but also in the last 2 games, I think he's done okay and enough to justify that. There's still a massive chasm between those players, and it's telling that they will now look at those cup games and want to progress as far as possible to be able to further their own careers in football. I think the other thing as well is that we'll only really know how good these players are at the end of the season when the retain list comes out, because actually there's a whole group of these players here, looking at the bench last night, who would want to be kicking on as well and moving forward in their own careers. So it's very, very competitive in that environment. But what we don't have at the moment is a lot of link between those group of players really pushing the first team. You can look at Garcia, who's made that step up, almost seamlessly. But beyond that, you want them to be kind of progressing and pushing those first team players a little bit more, and they're only going to get that with experience in terms of competitive football. So, I think these games are good, and I think they're really positive for the players, but also the fans. Those kind of plastic fans that have not seen the under-21s at all. Who are you? Why are you not going down to games? But at the same time, we want to see, as Ruben said last night, growing these players. We want them to stick with us in terms of the Reading way and have that ethos coming through. We know we can't buy players. The flip side of that, the positive side of that, is that all these players are starting to get a look in those kind of, those cup games and those lesser competitions, if you like, as opposed to the league. So it's going to be interesting how it pans out. I think the bench spots on Saturday against Stevenage are going to be interesting, and whether or not he feels that some of those players have earned the right over the last 180 minutes to be able to be involved in that. And then obviously back home next Tuesday to Newport County in the final game of this group. I think it's the final game to decide, because Cheltenham are through. So I think whoever wins between us and Newport, then we go through automatically as well to the next part of the cup. I think that's right. I think that's the case.
That's kind of fun. That's kind of fun. I think to your point on not knowing until the end of the season, I do take your point on that, because I think that Akonde was the player and Garcia are the players that they tried to kind of integrate, like right at the start of the season. But that gives them time to work on that through the summer. The ones I would be looking at the end of the year, I think Holtzman,
Holtzman, yeah,
the other center back, Ahmed, like I already said, and then Spencer's already played minutes in League One this season, and I think that he's probably one to keep an eye on too. So there are still some connections for sure. I do think there are fewer connections than I expected from the team that did so well in Premier League 2 last year, though, for sure. Like we Senga and Saki are good. Are a good item, players who I thought would be a little bit closer at this point. But you're right, like you never know until the retain list at the end of the season with youth players, and there's a million reasons that they might want to, go or stay at this age group. But
I think it was good to get a Kyle Peters on there as well. I think obviously scoring as many goals as he had. He summed it up really well on Saturday after the Fleetwood game, Ruben, when he said, we're not just doing this as a token gesture. We're doing it because they've earned the right, and they come in and they train and they play really well for the under-21s, and they put effort in. And I was like, actually, do you know what? You could look at these bigger clubs and go, right, we're just chucking young players because we need to, or fill quotas, or we want to play our first teamers, or whatever. But he's right. These players over the course of a very difficult period at this football club have earned the right to they've stuck with it. They did really well last year, as you mentioned, Ross, in the PL2. And, it's really nice to see a manager that does that. And I know that should be obvious in football, but it's not. We've had managers in the past who just don't rate the youth players at all and didn't want to give them an opportunity and wanted to buy their own players in. Whereas Ruben has been forced to do this, but also wants to do it. Having Noel Hunt there last night shows that he wants to get the balance right in terms of the messages that are being sent to those players playing for the first team, but also still being under Noel Hunt technically. So there are a lot of positives, I think, to come out of these last two games, and I just hope that we can, ultimately where we are, we just want these players to develop, and we want to sell them. Really, we want to make some money out of them, because that's what a club like us does, and that's
one
what we should
thing I will say, actually, I'm just thinking, because I'm sitting here and I'm like, is it true that how linked are the 21s and the full team this season? And I know I'd seen it, and I'm trying to remember who I saw it from very quickly, but they made a good point that I think actually their clubs are, like, the two teams are more integrated than we think right now. And that's kind of shown in how the U21 team hasn't had the best start to the season. And I think that it's hard for them sometimes to know always who they can actually play through the week, because they're having to send players off to the full team every single week. They're never getting, okay, I know this week I'm going to have all of these guys free, because it might come, day of, okay, now Kelvin's out for 3 months. So does that mean Osho is now going to be on the bench for 3 months, just to have another player? So a lot of these guys, it's tricky because you want them playing as much as they can at this age. But if we need players on the bench, this is where they're going to come from. And so I think that we definitely could see, it'd be nice to see a little bit more in terms of players, coming on and making more of an impact in the first team from the academy. I think if we're patient, we'll get that soon, because we already got that, last year. But I do think that even when the players just come in to sit on the bench, that affects the U21 team too. So not always just on the pitch, just in the dugout next to the pitch sometimes as well.
Yeah.
The U21 team are affected. So
I think it's definitely worth, next time we speak to Ruben on the pod, and there will be a next time, listeners, there will be a next time. He's already confirmed that with us, that this will be a big topic of conversation. How do you and the under-21 management team, Noel and his coaches, manage the workload of these players? This must have been difficult, having the under-21 game, Fleetwood and Cheltenham in the space of 4 days, 5 days?
Yeah, not long at all. Yeah, it's one of those
that's really difficult to manage and to logistically go.
This feels like the proper real League One-y part of the season. Where we're just pounding games and games and games and games. It was G Min who pointed out the results for the U21s have been affected by having to bring players in. So credit to G Min with that one. G Min Lee on Twitter, who used to be a Reading journo, but went on to bigger and brighter things. So anyway, it's a very good point, well made, and I wanted to.
Final word for the last 2 games, I think, goes to David Button, who has had a very torrid time, up and down. It never seemed to have affected him personally. I watched him in the warm-up the other week when we went to the game, and against Bristol Rovers. And he was just there with the fans. He was engaging with them. The previous home game, my son had walked down to the front of our stand at the end of the game, and he was giving people high fives and stuff. And he was good against Fleetwood. I think he was okay last night as well overall. And a lot of players of his, I say stature, but I mean more experience in terms of the levels that he's played at. He could have just thrown in the towel and gone, stuff it. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't need to do it. But the fact that he was picked over Kanaya Boyce Clark in those games, I think, is very, very telling. We all know that Pereira's number one. I think everyone, it's not news. Everyone in the club knows that, and they want him to be number one. But the fact that Button has done what he's done and kind of got on with it, with the amount of crap that he's had to take from fans, I have to say as well, I think is testament to his character. So, yeah, big up David Button, I have to say, because he's done well over these last 2 games, and he's clearly a good guy to have around the place in terms of being supportive and just doing the right things by the right people. So well done, David.
I'll shout out Harley Dean in that same kind of regard, just because I think the older, experienced players who, like you say, they don't need this. They could go elsewhere if they wanted to. Maybe not for. I don't even know what they're being paid or anything. So they could probably go elsewhere if they wanted to.
Mars bars. That's what they're being paid.
Yeah, exactly. They're being paid Mars bars and emails asking if they'd like to come and do the cleaning, to help the one cleaner. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're gonna leave those games where they are. We're gonna move on to the mailbag, which, I mean, it's not bulging, but there's a few little tidbits in there, if you like.
Good today.
Yeah.
It's a good mailbag.
There's some nice bits in there, so we'll get to that shortly. We'll be back in a little bit, short break, and then we'll be with the mailbag. Welcome back to episode 395.
Correct.
Of the Tilehurst podcast. Good. Did you see the kind of the intonation on my voice there?
Yeah.
I was is it? Do I say 4, 5, 6? What do I say?
I think no. Good. Yeah, you got it right.
313, whatever. But anyway, we're 395, so we're good. Right, where are we going to go with this? So we've got a few little bits first of all. Alex, who you will know, who was very, very prolific over the summer in terms of the articles. You will have heard him on our Iconic 11 series as well. Welcome back, by the way, Alex. Do you know what? We kind of wanted to reset the balance a little bit because we realised that the last podcast we did was just chaos and the noise level was just rubbish. And, I don't think... Well, we enjoyed it, and we just kind of like, I don't know. Hopefully, you enjoyed the last episode as well. But if you didn't and you get switched off because the noise level was naff, we get it. It's not a problem. So we kind of wanted to reset the balance. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that the next one we do, which should be Monday, I think. Sure. Maybe we'll get someone. We should get someone on, shouldn't we? Get someone else on to mix it up a bit, potentially. Okay. Anyway, Alex says, "How is Charlie Adam only 38?"
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Have you seen Wayne Rooney recently too? Like, there's something going on in the north of the Watford Gap, whereby people age like potatoes in a bag, but instead of sprouting little green bits or whatever, it's just like hair. Yeah. And it's all very rude. Like, it's very mean and unnecessary.
Faces like melted candles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're on the Steve Bruce Highway.
The Steve Bruce Highway. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, this is all very petty and
crass. Crass. That's what it is.
I didn't even realize that because I didn't get to watch the game. Because it wasn't on. Was he good? What was he like? Was it like when
he looks well? Like he looks like, I think it's an interesting route that he's got himself into in terms of the position. Like, you look at the team that he played in, and it was all right. That everyone will always talk about Fulham away and Charlie Adam and all the rest of it, and it's kind of those, if you were there, you were there, and if you know sort of thing. And I was always indifferent to Charlie Adam as a Reading player. Like, I didn't really go, great, he's playing today, or oh my God, he's playing today. I was just kind of in the middle. And he had a few good games, but realistically, he was coming to the end of his career when he was with us. But I think what a lot of these players are kind of are trying to do, or ex-players are trying to do, is carve out their own managerial career. And I think Fleetwood, with all due respect, is a really bizarre place. Like, it's a really strange... It hasn't got a train station, right? And it's kind of at the end... It's like the back end of Blackpool, basically. It's kind of like Blackpool's here, and then... we had this last year when we were trying to work out where Fleetwood was, and it was just all a bit bizarre.
I remember. Don't worry. Yeah. I've not asked anyone if they're a haddock or a cod yet, but I fully remember.
Well, yeah, and it's like, how do you recruit players to go to Fleetwood? You kind of sat there talking to your agent, right, who's in for me? Fleetwood. Right. Literally anybody else. But,
you're on the warpath this season. You went in for Crawley recently. You're like, Crawley as a place can do one. Now who
did Maidenhead awfully, by the way, at the weekend.
Oh, they
scored like 2 goals in 2 minutes right at the end of the game. Well, no, it was extra time. They scored in like the 97th minute, and then they won it in extra time, which was gross. Because imagine that, Maidenhead away in the next round of the Cup. Berkshire battle.
Yeah.
How good would that have been?
I know.
Anyway, I digress. Charlie Adam, I mean, look, I think it's quite incredible that he's able to manage a league side at the age of 38. And, I know they got relegated last year. I don't know how, I can't remember off the top of my head how much he was involved in the managerial point of that. But they were okay on Saturday. Like, they weren't awful at all. They couldn't score. They found that really difficult. I don't know if that was their kind of first team, if you like, or if they had a smattering of squad players. I've no idea. I really don't know, to be honest. But I think it's going to be interesting to see where people like Charlie Adam end up. And I know it's the other end of the scale, but players like Michael Carrick, who are from that area as well, obviously at Middlesbrough, to see where they go in terms of managerial career. You mentioned Wayne Rooney. I personally hope it really works out for him down there. I really do. I think there is, and I don't want to go into the whole Thomas Tuchel England thing. For what it's worth, I think it's a great appointment, but there is an argument to suggest that there isn't enough good quality English coaches in terms of being homegrown and going through the system to be able to be in the conversation for that kind of job,
Well, I can talk about that a little bit from a coach's perspective, because I would say, there's a very good reason there are far fewer coaches in England. It's because it's far more expensive than it is in nearly every other country in Europe, and even
to train.
to like train and become a coach and like to eventually get your pro license. I think that costs 15 grand in the United Kingdom, whereas it costs closer to like 2 grand in Spain. Obviously, these are different economic climates, like that, where people are
Yeah,
paid
yeah.
different amounts of money. But like the fact that it's like similar, like to get a pro license here in terms of cost, but the rate of pay is like higher over here. Like it is like if you make things difficult to attain, like financially, then they become difficult to attain financially. So like I think there are really good reasons why there aren't as many good coaches in England, because the talent is there. The thing that gives me hope, and you talked about how he's only 38, it's the era of the young coach, man. Like they're everywhere. We look at the. I think they were just saying at the. Oh my goodness! If you're watching on Riverside on YouTube, Riverside likes to make me do high fives and things.
Was that a bubble that just
Yeah, that was
popped
a
up?
bubble. Yeah, that popped up. Wait. I'm way off track for the
So I'll shut
listeners.
up. I'll mute
Um,
myself.
well, where was I now? Yeah, this is bad.
Young era of the young
Oh
coaches,
yeah.
man, is
So
what you said.
it's the era of the young coach, and that's what's going to save English coaching. Because we've got lots of good coaches cutting their teeth in lots of different environments now, whether that
Mm.
be waiting for like a high end job. Or going down to the lower leagues and really plying your trade down there. But yeah, I think like Postecoglou's the oldest coach in the Premier League, and he's not in his 60s. Which the only top level coach I can think of off the top of my head, at like a huge club, is Carlo Ancelotti, and I don't know how old Hansi Flick is, and I guess that would be my only other one. But it's really the era of the young coach. Anyway, we're way off now from wherever that
No,
was.
it's not. No, I mean, it's yeah. Charlie Adam is 38. I thought he looked, younger, if I'm honest. Based on the pictures and kind of the way he was moving around the pitch at full time in terms of clapping people. But look, it's good to see these people go out and try and make a name for themselves away from playing. I know he's obviously not played for us, but he's connected in some way to Reading Football Club. You look at Robbie Savage in terms of what he's been able to do. I think Macclesfield have got 41 points out of 45 this season, which is incredible. There's a lot of coaches out there, obviously, and we go back to Wayne Rooney again, that really are just trying to make their name in the game. And I think there are worse ways they can do that, in terms of taking on the jobs they've taken on. So you're right. There's a lot of possibilities, and don't forget, if Ruben ever decided to leave or he was taken by another team or whatever, we'd be looking at a lot of these managers and going, they'd be all right, actually. If particularly from sort of League One, League Two roundabouts, we'd be looking at a lot of these young managers. So I think a lot of promotion needs to be made generally in football about the age of these and how well they're doing and at difficult clubs, hard to sell clubs really. So yeah, listen, long may it continue. And it was an interesting point. So thank you for that, Alex. Um, we've got a question from someone called Simeon Pickup.
Oh, okay, not a clue.
No, I never heard of him. Sounds like a right loser. But
Yeah,
he says, we know who he is. He does all the hard work. He has a very difficult job editing our rubbish in.
yeah.
Well, he doesn't do the pod, does he? But he does the
Ask
written
his
stuff.
damn question. We know how hard his stupid life is. All right, come on.
It's stupid life. It's stupid head.
Anyway.
Question from me, text in, personal. Who is Reading's most dangerous right winger? Ooh, what do you mean by dangerous? Define danger.
Danger, yeah. What do you mean? Like, is he good with a Zweihander, or is he useful at putting crosses in? It's a really good question, isn't it? Because like, I feel, who are the options? Chem, Cambo, Akande, beyond there. I think it just goes further into the fact that like I'm really worried. I got to be honest, I'm quite worried about Kelvin's injury. I think Reading's wing situation isn't ideal right now, especially for a team that's already struggling in to play when the opposition like packs out the defense or like packs out one side of
Mm.
the field that they want to play down. There's been a few times this year when Reading have spent like the first half entirely going down the right side, and then had that shut down and not been able to do a whole lot. So yeah, I mean, like, who's our best right winger right now? Uh,
No, he didn't say he said dangerous, Ross. He said dangerous.
Dangerous. Sorry. I guess Akande. I think Akande is the most dangerous because I like the near post crosses, but like never.
I feel like I've bigged him up too much in this podcast already. Also, by the way, people that listen to the podcast regularly will know that Sim hasn't come on for ages, and we have tried to get him on. All jokes aside, haven't I asked him a lot, Ross,
We
to
was
come
literally
on,
on
and
episode 394.
that's what I was leading to saying. So, but
Oh, I'm
before
sorry.
we were
Yeah, yeah.
constantly asking him to come on, right? And he's like, no, too busy. Like, got a history book to read, or got to go and get a Lebanese takeaway, or look at pictures of cats or something. And he came on, and I think he did really, really well. Like, I honestly, it was great having him on episode 394. But anyway, my point was that again on Saturday, I said I can't work Chem Campbell out, and he was like, I don't think he knows what type of winger he wants to be, and that's a really good point because he doesn't. He's not aggressive enough to take players on. He will pop up with the odd goal, but it's almost like, oh, I'm here accidentally and I'll just have a shot. Like it's not. It doesn't seem to be. I'm purposefully going to move into this space and see what I can do, kind of offensively, to use your word. Those American terms, and he just didn't. He doesn't do it for me. And I always look at it and go, I don't think he's doing anything that Akande can't do. And I'd rather see Akande play.
Yeah, yeah, I think I probably prefer Akande at the moment. But I guess no, because the question is danger. I think that Akande's got the most attacking upside, not offensive, attacking upside.
Okay.
But in terms of all round play that helps the team the most, I do still think Chem Campbell is better. Certainly at interpreting his role in defense and in like defensive transition and stuff like that. My issues with Akande are less with him going forward and more with how he tracks runners and how he helps out the players
Mm.
behind him. Because I think there are some issues there. But yeah, in terms of the most danger added, I'll go with Akande. But I think those
Well,
numbers, like thinking statistically, are very close between those two
yeah.
players from what I remember. So I don't think there is a great answer to this question.
No, there isn't. I can't answer it. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, we're very short. And what's slightly ironic to me is that in the summer we talked about how important that was on the right hand side with Aziz being better, but being able to have a solid base behind him at right back. And yet, what are we 2-3 months into the season? Aziz has gone. We've got Garcia playing right back, and like you know, right wing
Left
is
back.
technically still
Yeah, yeah.
sorry, left back, yeah. And with Michael Craig at right back, what am I talking about? It's a mess.
Garcia might be one of the options, by the way. Garcia might be what we do
It
now
could,
because, like, it may
but
be like the way to do this now is to, bring Ahmed into the team,
mm,
um, and maybe play Ahmed on the right. No, wait, maybe play Ahmed on the no. Maybe you bring Rashisha in, right? Because he's been playing left back
but
for
he's been great.
yeah.
Rashish has been really good in that position as well. But I think he's still got more to give further up the field. You know,
Rashisha.
I yeah,
Okay. I was going to say
yeah,
maybe at this point because I'm quite worried about what we have going forward on the wings, and maybe you keep Garcia where he is because he can provide some width
yeah.
and all those kinds of things on the left side. But I am worried about like what the attack looks like without Kelvin. I think that he was allowing us. I don't know. He wasn't always perfect, but he was just a good player. Whereby we would often like overload the right side of the pitch and leave
Mm.
him pretty much 1v1 over and over again. And he wouldn't even win like half of those 1v1s necessarily, but he would win a few a game and then really be in a dangerous position right away. And I think part of that happened because of his height for one
Yeah.
thing, and we necessarily don't
But
have a player with that kind of physical presence who can play on the
I,
wing.
I think the
So
thing we miss, and I'm slightly biased because Calvin's one of my favourite players or current favourite players anyway. Um, what he's added to his game that we're going to miss is the aggression, the kind of what I call the winger aggression in terms of taking people on and not giving the ball up easy. Because you're coming up against some difficult characters at fullback in this league who are a bit grizzled and a bit like I'm just going to chop people. And I think Kelvin's done really, really well to be able to weather that. Yes, his kind of scoring output and attacking output probably isn't where he wants it to be and probably where we want it to be. But actually, if you look at how he gets on the ball and the kind of the space that he moves, as you've just said, I think he's given a lot to this team that goes unnoticed. And I would agree with you. I am slightly concerned about how that's going to look really
Yeah,
moving
yeah.
forward for us. But
I think it's going to be Akande and Chem Campbell, which kind of rounds out the question because that's who I was
yeah,
deciding between for a dangerous right winger. But I think that it's going to probably end up that at the weekend it'll be Campbell on the left and Akande on the right. But I do think another potential solution would be to play Rashisha at left back and then push Garcia up into the front line where he can use that dribbling. In a bit more of an attacking way.
yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where I would go.
Right, what else we got? Tom Sheeran, 87, 2 years younger than me. Congrats. Well, I'm assuming that 87 is the year he was born. I don't know.
He just really likes
Uh,
the year 1987.
yeah,
Mate,
exactly. Yeah.
he's a Patriots fan. He's a Rob Gronkowski fan. There you go.
We,
87 is a number worn by a lot of tight ends, a lot of famous tight ends in the National
is it?
Football League. Yeah, I think Kelsey wears that number too. But anyway, I digress. Ask me a soccer question.
He says would have taken our current position in a heartbeat at the start of the season. Correct. Akande looks strong against Cheltenham, especially in the second half. Hoping Rashisha gets some more mins. He seems pretty calm under pressure. Wellens also appeared to be a threat when he came on. Yeah, I mean, we haven't really talked about Wellens in terms of the
Bad.
role that he played. He kind of started. He came on, didn't he, last night? He didn't start the game.
Wellens, yeah. He came on shortly after the break, and that got
59. Yeah, Charlie Wellens.
that got mad. He tried an overhead kick within like 5 minutes. There are points where I think I wrote in my ratings about him that there are like points where he just wants to be involved in everything. Wellens, and like there were points when that was really working for him, and points when he was
Yeah.
like his teammates' way. It just reminds. There's always like a few players in every youth team that like think that they need to be involved in everything, every last
Just
play.
give me the ball. Let me touch
Yeah,
the ball.
it was
Yeah.
very funny. Like I did think that at times though it was useful. Like he had some aggression that Reading were actually lacking at times, and like any
Yeah.
impetus to attack and go forward, and that's awesome. It was just also okay. It was just a very strange. I think I gave him the best rating of the subs who came on. It was just a very odd performance.
Yeah.
Sometimes really really good, and sometimes like what are you doing, son?
Do
But yeah.
you? We have kind of touched upon Rashisha. Do you think he's done enough to be in contention for, dare I say it, Saturday squad?
Yes, if we're, like if Garcia isn't going to start in the back four, sure. Like we've been confused about Rashisha for ages. It's pretty much since we started doing this podcast now. We're like, oh, Rashisha seems good. And he got like game time like early in Salazar's reign, and then it's just kind of not really been there for him since. And I'd be lying if I said I fully understood with Rashisha. I don't think he's like any kind of game breaking player or anything like that. But this is a time when we're playing a 16-year-old and a centre mid as our fullbacks, and Rashisha doesn't even seem to get a look in right now, which is surprising to me personally. Like I'm not there on the training ground, but like from what I saw yesterday, he wasn't amazing. But he's playing left back, which is the third position I've seen him play this year. Like he's going anywhere you ask him to go, and just being a useful player. Like I am surprised we don't see more of Rashisha, but I've been saying that for a year. So
Listen, you know where I stand on fullbacks. You want to be getting sixes, sevens out of them every single game, and that's why Chris Gunter was a brilliant player for this football club. But let's not go into that again. We just want consistency, and I think a little bit like Holzman, it's a big year for him as well. In terms of trying to get something for next season here. So, look, I think the team selection or the squad selection rather for Saturday is going to be interesting. I really do. Whether or not you can amalgamate the games that we've had and the importance of it being a league game and all the rest of it and away from home too. is it time to try something different? I don't know. We'll talk about that in a minute. Final question on the pod. Mark Hopgoo. I said that right?
Yeah,
Just says Mark. He's got a
just go with
cracking picture of the beach on his profile picture.
Yeah.
2 centre backs yesterday look ready for the bench. Holzman looks assured. I want to see Craig in midfield and will take a draw right now. This is for Stevenage, which again I can't disagree with Mark. Desperately need to add to the first team squad. If we finish outside the relegation places, I'll be happy. That's not a bad overall. If we're rating comments, as we tend to do, that's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, it's pointless me asking you about where we're going to finish in the league because you still think we'll go up automatically. So there's no point.
I never said that. Like, all right, let's just go with this now because it's funny. Like, I think we could be aiming for more than a point. By the way, at Stevenage. Oh God, should we actually do the preview? I'll save that for the preview.
Yeah, save it for the preview. Yeah, save it.
There's other things. Michael Craig in the midfield. Yes, I would like to see that again sometime soon.
See, I wouldn't. That's the only bit I disagree with. I think it's great, right? That I really do.
I think so too. I just think like when you've got a versatile player, you can play him in a bunch of different positions, and he played well for Reading in the 4-1-4-1 for ages last year. So I'm perfectly fine with bringing Michael Craig into midfield if the fullback situation improves. But I do think that he's done enough to keep his place. But again, let's talk about Ahmed. He might be there and be able to do well. Like Rashisha can play there. Like it's one of the few positions that we have options at. So it'll be interesting at some point to see how that looks. But there's no way Wing is getting displaced anytime soon while he has a contract at Reading Football.
Yeah, he does seem like he's not, he's never going to be moved on unless he decides to move on. And I don't know. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I'm not sure. I think when you look at what he can bring to games at the drop of a hat, you kind of have to have him there.
We have to have a player like that. Yeah. He's the difference in games that get stodgy and out of like they just become like physical battles rather than like there being necessarily like two game plans going at each other. Wing's the guy who can like pull you out. Wing is the guy who pulls you out when you're stuck against. Who is it he scored his screamer against recently? I don't even know. But when we're not playing well, Wing.
Who's Lewis Wing?
Yeah. He still pulls things out. No, I can't remember. That's fine.
I'm going to find out. No. I need to find out. Keep talking.
This is the one where he's got the goal of the month competition anyway. Crawley, thank you. Yeah. It's right that Wing keeps his place in the team and all these kinds of things. It just leads to us having to discuss Savage versus Elliott versus Craig versus the entire Reading fan base over and over, which is, so... Hey, centre mid, again, one of the few spots that we actually have some options at, and that's a good thing.
True. Yeah, I mean, there's some good points in them. I like Holzman. I've said that already. I think he's very, very assured. I think Ross will hate this. I don't see Bindon staying with us for much longer.
Oh no, I've been saying that for. I know this is his last season with Reading. I'm like that. That's a prediction I feel stronger about than Reading in the playoffs for sure. Is that Bindon will not be here this time next year. That guy is way too good. Agree that
Holzman's really got to look at it and go, this is an opportunity that I can't pass up. And I hope it works out for him. He's been around the bush a little bit in terms of loans and kind of not so much flirting with the first team, but he's been around the under-21s and he's a good player. He is a good player and he will grow in confidence. But, with other players that will move on eventually, as Ross has mentioned, it's make or break for him this season, I think. So, yeah, we'll see how that pans out.
By the way, older than Tyler Bindon, Louis Holzman.
Who, Louis Holzman?
Louis Holzman's older than Tyler Bindon.
Shut your face. No, he is not. How old is he?
And he's 20.
Is he really?
He is, yeah. Wait, I got something awful that I've seen as well. Those two have gone together for such a long time. Stickland and Holzman, thought of them together in the academy and things like that.
Yeah.
There's a Tilehurst end. When you type Louis Holzman into Google, you're going to get a Tilehurst end tagged image of Michael Stickland. So that just shows you, how much those two are tied together in the internet world. I think Holzman's ahead of Stickland, by the way,
Yeah,
this
he
year
is. Yeah, yeah.
on the basis of one performance against Cheltenham. Stickland is the guy who does the talking. Holzman is the guy who does the defending, from what I saw. And Stickland was not as good defensively as Holzman. Holzman was much more of a presence. So yeah, but anyway, if he's gonna learn from Tyler Vinden, he'll be learning from a man a little bit younger than him, which is
But
quite amazing.
again, I hope it works out. You never want to see a lot of these players go. Obviously, we haven't even mentioned uh, Jocko Anderson, who's had his contract terminated. That sounds very dramatic, but by mutual consent has moved on. And again, it just haven't got it right with the goalkeepers over the last few years. And I keep going back to Harvey Collins at Maidenhead. I feel like we really missed a trick with him, but we are where we are. It is what it is. We're going to move on to the preview. Stevenage, another cracking place. Stevenage, I tell you that. So we're going to talk about that after this short break. I've got the giggles now.
You're gonna
Also,
sound like
if you're not
travel
watching the
guy.
video, we're both wearing Ajax shirts, which is weird because we
Yeah,
never say what we're going to wear. We just turn up. We go, oh hi, how are you? On
happens.
Zoom,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
we've
I
got
like that.
not Zoom, Riverside, and then we've got both got Ajax shirts. So yeah, there we go.
Watch it on
Stevenage up
YouTube.
next.
Is
Oh, go
Ben's
on.
point basically? Watch it on YouTube. Anyway, let's go into the preview.
Let's do the preview. Let's do it. Welcome back to the final part of episode 395. It's taken me all of the podcast to get that confidently correct. So we are on 395. Five away, if my maths is correct, from saying extravaganza. We got nothing planned yet for episode 400, which should be before Christmas, all being well. If you've got any suggestions of what we could do, and
If
you're
you want
listening
to
to this,
host
go,
it in your front
yeah,
room,
if you want to do it, listen. We might do a thing where we get listeners on and they come on and we do little. I don't know. Like, if you got any ideas, let us know. But all the usual channels, we're open to ideas. We want to do something for it, obviously, but we don't know what yet. So if you've got anything you think, oh, that'd be wicked, that'd be really good to listen to my favourite podcast, episode 400. Just let us know. Just let us know, and we're open to that. Let's talk about Stevenage FC, 15th in Football League One. Off to Stevenage at the weekend at Ross Lamex Stadium, right next to a Marks and Spencer's, if I remember
okay,
correctly, which
okay,
is not a bad place to be given this time of year because their food at Christmas is stunning. So there is an opportunity
okay.
to get a decent sandwich before the game. What are we saying about Stevenage? What are we saying about this game in general?
I'll ask
Not a
you.
huge. Go on.
I was going to say, I'll ask you what you think of Stevenage in a minute, because it's you who's writing the travel guide for our listeners here. Don't go here, it's rubbish. Don't go here, it's also rubbish. This one's got a lovely local store called Marks and Spencer's. Go here, it's great. What do I think of Stevenage? Well, I don't know anything about the town, but the football club, they're glad probably that they're out from underneath the iron grasp of Steve Evans, obviously, and I expect that for them, this is probably a season where they're thinking about consolidation, because obviously they came up 2 seasons ago and they were playing that very particular brand of football, and it was working for them for a while, and then started to peter out as the season went on, which is incidentally how I think Wrexham's season is going to go. But so this year, I expect that they'll be happy with a mid-table finish or just staying comfortably up in this league. They're on a bad run. They've lost their last three in a row, and they've lost four of the last five. That includes a home loss to Cambridge. Cambridge, they are currently 22nd, and they've won 9 of their points, in their last 3 games. So Cambridge really not the best side, and Stevenage went down to them at home last time out. So
Mm.
I think this is one that it's really going to depend on like how Reading look going forward, because like I said in the previous section, I got some real worries about what the front line looks like without Kelvin, and with a Sam Smith who is he fully fit. I'm not 100% sure about that. So yeah, I think that it could be a pretty scrappy, rubbish game. I'm not gonna lie, and I wouldn't be super surprised if Reading come out with a 1-0 win or something like that, or if it goes the other way, or if it's the first 0-0 of the season. I really wouldn't be surprised by that. They don't score a ton of goals. So they've scored 10 in 14 games so far this season, which is the lowest of any team in League One. I think we're looking at a pretty. If you watched Cheltenham, you might be in for a similar game with this one. But I think that Reading have a little bit more quality, like Lewis Wing, like we've talked about, and should be able to tip this one in their favour. But yeah, tune in for what could be a chess match rather than a barnstormer, I would say.
I mean, they've got an interesting group of players. Obviously Dean Buzanis is there
Oh, he
currently.
is he?
Um,
Okay.
Jake Forster-Caskey, for those people that like their Reading folklore, it's sort of involved with both Nicky Forster and Darren Caskey in terms of where he's at from a lineage point of view. Eli King, on loan from Cardiff, who I quite like as a player. There are some interesting players there, and I was reading a lot about Alex Revel, their manager, and is he under pressure? I mean, I guess managers are always under pressure, aren't they? But as you said, Ross, they've not had a good period of time. They kind of squeezed past Guiseley in the FA Cup, and they beat him on penalties, 5-4 maybe off memory. So it's a winnable game, but the problem for us, Ross, is that it's away, and it is becoming a real sticking point with this football team, and the fact that we can kind of get through games at home and not be great, but pick up points, pick up wins, progress. But away from home, it's just not working, is it? And I was listening to a radio station that I won't mention, but they couldn't explain it, which was interesting given that they watch all the games and they should have a background and a grounding in why that's not working. But from your point of view, is it just a mental thing? Is it that the players know actually we're away from home and that's caused us so many issues, not just this season but in previous seasons? Or is it a fundamental element in terms of the way that we press, in terms of the energy that we bring to games at home, that's just not translating away?
No, I'm trying to think of like the performances, like both at home and away this season. And like I think that so obviously the recent games that I was able to be at with the Bristol Rovers and Exeter, they kind of had similar flows to them at times in that Reading really went off the boil and just let a team attack them over and over again. And so it can happen at home, it can happen away. And I do think that they're doing a slightly better job of holding out in games now. Obviously, that's not what we saw last time. It kind of got away from us very quickly. And that was that. And I think that's something that you see a few times, which I do think that's probably a mental thing. Like we've gone through a few away games this season whereby the collapse hasn't been prolonged, maybe like it was a season before. We concede 10 minutes later, concede 10 minutes later, concede. It's been more of a case of like a 10-minute period, bang, 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 concede, 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 and then everything comes back to normal again for a bit. And it's all fine again. I think this was the case in our most recent league game that we lost. So against Stockport. So that was a case of like to go down one, immediately equalize, immediately 2-1, immediately your 16-year-old right back has pulled somebody down in the box, and it's 3-1, and the game is basically gone. So I do think that there is still a mental side to it. I would tentatively say Reading are improving away from home, though.
I would agree with that. Other people go, "What's he on about? Gone ballistic." But when you look back at the results, and I'll read them now just as a final point to this pod. We drew Birmingham on the very first game of the season. Great time to play them because they were still getting their act together, and we should have won the game. There's no two ways about it. We deserve to win that game. League Cup, lost on penalties to Colchester. Again, I don't think anyone really cares or remembers that, so we move on from that. Lost 3-0 to Wrexham, which, again, very difficult given that I think it was...
Right? There were two very quick together.
Yeah.
Again, like it's quick hits now. Like it's not these long prolonged. Yeah, Ollie Palmer 23, Elliot Lee 33. Like it's just bang bang, like 10-minute
Yeah.
period, and you're gone. Like and they came out in that game and scored again right after halftime. But just to remind everyone of Wrexham, more shots, more possession, almost double the passes made and stuff like that. I know this stuff doesn't count for much, but yeah, like they had to foul us twice as much in that game. Like we had them on the ropes, but just couldn't convert that day. So again, it's like these bang, 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 quick things, quick 10-minute periods where the game just gets away from us.
Bolton 5-2, Rotherham 2-1, beat Exeter again. I think that 45 minutes in the first half is probably the best we played all season, I think. Certainly in terms of the way that we set ourselves up and the aggression, but the positivity that we showed to take the game to them, and richly deserved that win. I have to say, second half wasn't brilliant, but based on that 45, the first 45 alone, we did enough to do that. And then Stockport, we lost 4-1 to. Let's just look at those teams, and I'll read those back to you: Birmingham, Wrexham, Bolton, Rotherham. Take Exeter out because we beat them. Stockport. These are teams that either at the start of the season were touted to do very well in terms of those higher positions, but also when you look at Stockport, have had a very good start to the season that not many people would have predicted. So we've not played teams that are terrible away from home. And this is why I agree with you in terms of I think actually the performances are getting better. Yes, we have leaked a lot of goals away. And I think the frustration from the fan base, from what I can see, is that this is a hangover from last year and previous years when our home form has been, away form has been absolute trash. It really has. But if you look at this season in isolation, it's not the end of the world. We're still sat in what, 9th position? And our home form will get us through.
Are in the top 10 other than Rotherham. All of them.
There you go. Right.
Now, including Stockport. So we played the one team we've played away from home outside of the top 10 is a team that came down from the Championship last season.
Yeah.
So it gives you an idea of the strength of schedule again, which partly came from that first month. It was just a nightmare.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But these, I don't think when you look at those games in isolation and then as a block of games, the players should be bricking it about going away from home. And I think, a little bit of perspective is needed based on the context of this season, how we've performed away from home. There are games where we've lost control of it in terms of the scoreline, but the overall performances haven't been too bad. Like they've not been horrendous. For my mind, the Birmingham game is the best game I think we played. The 45 minutes against Exeter was the best half of football we've had. So, that there are some really, really strong, green shoots to take out of these games. And I think we'll win on Saturday. I think we've got enough to do that. And that will obviously take us into the Newport game in the Cup at home on Tuesday. And then we haven't had official confirmation to my knowledge, but the Shrewsbury game will be postponed because of international call-ups that weekend. So that gives us another opportunity to reset when we go again away against Peterborough on the 23rd of November. So there are some positives to take away from this. And I do feel that we will win the game on Saturday. And I'm not going to say it's comfortable, but Stevenage are not in great form. The vibe around the club isn't great at the moment in terms of where they are and the results they've had. And I think we've got enough to unsettle them. I really do. And I hope that is the case. And we can use that as a springboard moving forward for the away performances and ultimately results. So, we'll see where we get to. We will be... Are we going to be back on Monday? Is that realistic?
Or should we next week? You never know at this point in the season when there's games every 3 days or whatever. But we
could do it a week's time, couldn't we? Because then we could talk about a Newport game.
Well, maybe, but we'll litigate this off the pod rather than making our schedule for all the listeners to hear about.
No, I think they need to know the thought process, Ross. I think they need to know how ridiculous
we're
we
letting
can be.
Them all behind the curtain here. issues what's going
You're
on.
breaking the fourth wall. Stop it.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
but
But we'll be back.
Ross is right. We'll be back with episode 396 next week.
Yeah.
Ross, have a really good rest of your week.
Thank you very much. Come watch
In,
the pods, listeners, on YouTube. They're all out now. They come out a little bit later in the week, but yeah, you can watch us on there if you want to watch us pontificate or do anything like that. And there's other good videos from myself and Ben on the YouTube channel too. So we do get our faces out there more than we used to.
yeah,
Come and look
try
at our
to.
faces, please.
We'll there'll be a clip, I'm sure, of this podcast as well. So I'm sure Ryan, bless him, will knock something up.
Cool.
Enjoy your lunch, your hot lunch, Ross. What have you got today? Or have you had it?
I had a burrito today. I've already had my hot lunch. Thank you, though. But yeah,
Had a
enjoyed it.
burrito for lunch.
Yeah, it was good. Just a small one, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, like a little tortilla and wrap it up. Chicken, cilantro, bueno.
Oh, nice. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
that. Love that. Well, listen. Enjoy your hot dinner then. Whatever is coming
Thank you.
later on in the day for you. I'm off to bed in a little while because it's 9:33 my
Yeah,
time,
it's getting
our
late.
time, Tyler's time. So yeah, we will be back next week. If you're going to Stevenage, enjoy it. Look after yourselves. Keep the faith. We're going to get there. Trust me, we're going to get there. And when we do, it's going to be fantastic. We'll see you next week. And yeah, come on, you ask.